obscure prison where we meet Bruce Wayne for the first time, fighting and beating.
Actually, there were 7 of them.
I counted 6, Mr. Wayne.
Thrown into isolation, Bruce meets Liam Neeson's Ducard, who kicks off Bruce's journey. Actually, Bruce is correct as there were 7 men. This can be seen as like a psychological trick by Ra's, who subtly breaks down Bruce's confidence by planting seeds of doubt about his own ability. Flashback to a young Bruce now, who has an unfortunate meeting with a colony of bats. His father comes to rescue him with the motif of the entire trilogy.
And why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Speaking of his family, Bruce brings them outside from a theatre because of his fear of bats. This isn't a good-looking alley. This sequence of Bruce's fear-induced memories are kickstarted by Ducard tucking the purple flower into his coat, cleverly foreshadowing the powers of the fear toxin later. Amidst the tragedy, we meet Jim Gordon and Alfred Pennyworth, who are the only ones that console a young Bruce. Armed with that sadness, we cut back to Bruce and Ducard, and the training begins with the theatrics, combat, and gadget skills that will eventually form
Batman.
One final flashback, an adult Bruce attempts to kill his parents' murderer, Joe Chill.
Hey Joe, Falcone says hi.
Luckily, an assassin beat him to it, but the intent was there. He then shows his bravery by standing up to the tertiary villain of this film, Carmine Falcone. And just like that, we're up to speed. Backstory fully told. Ducard continues to train Bruce to be the ultimate warrior. With the flower Bruce picked earlier, he forces him to
Breathe in your fears.
Bruce even eventually besting his master with his superior intellect. However, Bruce nobly fails on the final test to kill a murderer as punishment. He has now gathered all the skills for his ascendancy to Batman. Bruce Wayne is ready to transform. He will not kill. Well, technically he didn't kill him. Ra's should have listened to Ducard.
Always mind your surroundings.
Unwilling to let his mentor meet the same fate, Bruce dives down a cliff, just saving Ducard and pulling him to safety. What a noble move, he definitely will never regret. Bruce then returns to Gotham, where we meet our secondary villain, Scarecrow, and with Morgan Freeman's Fox now on our side, we have a gearing up montage, complete with Bruce finally and getting Gordon on his side. Nolan's adjusted position of Fox allows this Batman to be grounded in reality, as it makes sense why the equipment exists because it's military, but as it's just the issue of such exquisite material being noticed is also covered. At a shipment of Falcone, Nolan finally treats us to the greatest superhero of all time. Shot from the terror of the criminals, wisps of the cape and cowl are all that is seen as the Krux are picked off one by one from the mysterious shadow. Batman is using the fear that the criminals have monopolized against him for once, and he proclaims his arrival with the classic line,
I'm Batman.
His circular journey is shown to be completed as he speaks to the same homeless man.
Nice coat.
Before, he was a sheepish young man who is powerless to Falcone. Now, he has just defeated the most powerful criminal in the city. Batman then interrogates the Crooked Crop Flask with an all-time line.
I swear to God. Swear to me!
The criminals of the city have just had the fear of a new god stored in them. Batman investigates the mysterious drug shipment, but is attacked by Scarecrow and his fear toxin before setting him alight. Inadvertently, by being poisoned, Batman has actually saved the city, as Fox could only administer a cure because of Bruce's exposure. In this portion of the film, Scarecrow affirms himself as a major villain. After besting Batman, he takes care of Falcone with a terrifying display of his fear toxin, all whilst keeping us scared of the big bad, as he alludes to
Whatever he's planning, it's big.
Dr. Crane then shows Rachel around Arkham Asylum, and with the serenity of a horror villain, he stalks down the fleeing lawyer and finishes off his tricolon of terror. With this, we are truly shown how fear is the main theme of the film. Every main character is defined by it. Falcone terrorizes the people of Gotham. Scarecrow basks in the power fear gives him. Ra's also weaponized fear, and Batman accumulates all three of these perspectives as he uses fear to achieve his goals. But unlike the others, they are purely for the good of the people, compared to Falcone and Scarecrow's selfish use of power. Ra's and Bruce both appear to try and use their fear for their good, but the differences between them are shown as Bruce only uses his fear on criminals, whereas Ra's is glad to terrify civilians as well, showing that his twisted perspective of balance is in fact inherently villainous. Batman then scoops Rachel up and summons a colony of bats to let him evade the police, a gadget that was not mentioned before or since. Could have been useful here. Here.
Lighten up.
Here. And here.
Oh, your money!
However, Nolan makes up for this somewhat plot hole by showing us the Batmobile in a chase scene, soaring over rooftops and ducking in and out of the shadows, just like its driver. He brings her to the Batcave and administers the cure, but it's now up to Gordon to mass produce it. However, I do have to point out another plot hole of the poison, as it makes one person crazy, causes another one to fall asleep, a third to go crazy and then recover with no antidote, and a fourth to nearly die. Not that there can't be different effects, but that's going pretty far. Weary though, as Bruce has to host his birthday party, but it's not a celebration, as the twist of the film is upon us.
Mr. Raz Al Ghul?
You're not Ra's al Ghul. I watched him die.
But is Ra's al Ghul immortal? Are his methods supernatural?
Setting the mansion alight, Ra's and Bruce begin to fight, although the master assassin swiftly overpowers.
You burned my house and left me for dead. Consider us even.
Although I'm not sure what he's on about there, as the two have nothing in common, as Bruce quite literally saved him from death in the first encounter. Now this is where the masterful story building of Nolan is truly shown. He already set up the purple flower Bruce picked to be fear-inducing, hinted that it was in Falcone's drugs, showed a drug being pumped around Gotham's water supply for months, and mentioned a water vaporizer being stolen. He's not perfect though, as this whole intricate, beautiful plan relies on no one boiling water for weeks, as otherwise the whole plan would have already been suspected and reported. Ra's now exits the back of a truck with that very same vaporizer, and Gotham is in trouble. The narrow part of the city has its water pipes blown sky high, and the fear swallows the island. Rachel and the citizens are all alone with the drawbridges up, abandoning them. That won't stop the Caped Crusader though, as he soars in with the Batmobile and beats down ninja after ninja. Scarecrow makes his final appearance, tormenting Rachel and Gordon's son with a fire-breathing horse. But for a terrifying villain, played by a sublime actor, he meets a quiet end from Rachel's taser. Quite underwhelming if you ask me. Ra's now brings the vaporizer on the Thomas Wayne train and heads to Wayne Tower, where if reached, the entire city would plunge into the unbridled chaos of fear. But Bruce won't let that happen, as we have a final showdown, student versus master, two sides of the same coin. Ra's gains the upper hand, but as Gordon shoots out the train tracks, he is helpless, as Batman calls back his prior
Alert! Mind your surroundings!
and refuses to repeat his prior mistake for the good of the city.
I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
In a lovely touch, instead of screaming in fear like a typical villain, Nolan gives Ra's a noble death as he accepts his fate. Their duel is so significant for Bruce as it is a defining moment as a man. Ra's mirrors Thomas Wayne's word, showing the parallels between his father and mentor in Bruce's
Don't be
life.
afraid, Bruce.
Yet Bruce is determined to save the city, just as his father was, and in order to save Gotham, he realizes he has to destroy the last memory of his father, being the train. By making this hard choice, Bruce fulfilled his father's legacy, and simultaneously affirmed him as his own man, truly completing his arc in the film. And with the few teasers for the Batcave and a certain Clown Prince, the first installment of this legendary trilogy comes to an end. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to check out this video on this film's iconic sequel, The Dark Knight, and leave any suggestions for future films you'd like to see recapped, broken down, analysed, and explained.